a movie and drama critic for the Kansas City Journal-Post, and he married Jane Sherwood, like himself a native of Kansas City. He began reading the comics on local radio Sunday mornings for $10 a show. Later, he began doing The Movie Man based on his newspaper reviews, also at 10 a show. He was finishing his Movie Man stint one night when the program director frantically motioned him to stay on the air. The performers for the next 15-minute program hadn't arrived, and the station was on the spot. Ace, his material exhausted, began to ad-lib. Jane, standing nearby, jumped into the breach, and they started an on-the-air dialogue. They talked about last night's bridge game and any other subject that popped into their heads. Favorable reaction poured in, and the station put Easy Aces on as a regular feature. It became so popular that it attracted network attention. The Aces were brought to Chicago, and the show opened on CBS in October 1931. By 1935, the show was done out of New York, where it ran until January 1945. In February of 1948, the show was revived on CBS, where it ran until 1949. Tonight's show of Easy Aces is Jury Duty from the 1948 season.
Ladies and gentlemen, Easy Aces.
The Constitution of the United States says that every man is entitled to a trial by a jury of his peers. Peers, Funk and Wagnalls, in their latest bestseller entitled Dictionary, have this definition of a peer.
A peer is a person of equal intellect, knowledge, understanding, and intelligence.
Thank you, Mr. Funk.
I'm Wagnalls.
Oh, sorry. Equal intellect, intelligence. Now, with that definition in mind, it becomes quite obvious they selected Jane alphabetically. But don't get the wrong idea. As a housewife, Jane has no equal. She's a human dynamo.
As a housewife, I have no equal. I'm a human domino.
I should know. After all, she is my lawful wedded wife.
He should know. After all, I am his awful wedded wife.
But she's never seen the inside of a courtroom.
I saw the movie The Paradine Case 3 times.
The summons for jury duty arrived as we were having breakfast, and Jane, of course, was quite excited about it.
But dear, I didn't do it. I'm not guilty. I've got an alibi. Who saw me? I only hit the gum machine once and nothing came out and I couldn't get my penny back.
Gum machine? What are you talking about?
Well, how long can they give me? And will you come up to visit me?
Jane, will you stop? This is only a summons to serve on a jury. Somebody else is on trial, not you.
You sure? I mean, now this has got nothing to do with it.
Oh, sit down, Jane, and stop worrying. Fine juror you're going to make.
Well, how do you think they happen to think of me? I never jurred before. What do I have to do?
All you have to do is sit in a jury box and listen to the evidence. It says a petit jury, that's a civil case, somebody probably suing somebody for money, and you have to decide whether he gets the money or not. And oh yes, a juror gets paid $3 a day.
I do? Oh, well, then I'll say he's not guilty.
Who's not guilty?
Well, whoever it is. After all, if he's nice enough to pay me $3 a day to be on his jury, the least I can do is recuperate and say that he didn't break the gum machine. Doesn't it to you?
Jane, you don't even know what the case is about. You can't make up your mind in advance. You have to be unbiased.
What?
Unbiased. It means you gotta have an open mind.
Oh, well, I got an open mind.
Yes, they need you like a hole in the head.
Oh, that must be Paul.
I need him that way, too.
Well, I'll let him in, dear.
While Jane goes to let her brother Paul Sherwood in the house, I ought to tell you something about him. Paul is now in the construction business. Right now, he's overseeing a big project at 45th and 1st Avenue, the new United Nations building. His office is the third peephole from the left, overlooking the steam shovel. Another thing he overlooks is getting a job. He thinks working for a living is for peasants. He hopes to make a fortune with one stroke of genius. He spends most of his time playing cards.
I spend most of my time playing cards.
That's why he's never reached the pinnacle of success.
I'm a success at pinnacle.
Oh, now you've met him, you can have him. Jane's opening the door to let him in.
Good morning, sis. How are you?
Paul, the most exciting thing I just got a summons for. Oh, I'm fine.
Hiya, brother. Don't get up.
Who's getting up?
I just happened to be passing by on my way down to the construction.
Oh, no, not that same routine again. Paul, we know you'll always have to be in passing at breakfast time. Just sit down and eat.
Thanks.
Paul, what do you think? I'm gonna jury.
You're what? Make that a large orange juice, will you, Jane? Got a big day ahead of me.
Big day. What's going on today? Blasting?
Oh, we're through blasting.
I'm glad.
But the excavating's been held up by the muds. We couldn't get the trucks in and out.
We couldn't.
Had a lot of excitement around the past week. There was a truck pulling out and...
Paul, now don't you want to hear about my jurying?
Well, yeah, sis. What's up?
Well, I'm gonna be on a jury. Somebody's suing somebody for some money in the gum machine, and I have to decide how much money he gets or not. But I have to be on a bias.
Isn't that awful?
Oh, I don't think so, dear. $3 a day is not to be sneezed.
$3 a day. Can this big, rich city afford that? Pass the eggs, Jane.
Help yourself, Paul.
$3 measly a day. So you're on a jury 2 weeks. You'll wind up with a measly $30. That kills me.
Paul, have you got change for a quarter?
Change? No, I don't
Never
think...
mind. I gotta get going, Jane. I'll call you.
Yes, yeah, you call me, and I'll let you know how I'm doing. You call me at the courthouse about noon.
Oh, sure. The judge will run down to the candy store and take a message. Well, Jane weighed in on the scales of justice at 105, wearing purple trunks and an off-the-face hat. In the other corner, in the black robe, her very capable opponent, the judge at 178, that's blood pressure. The first day's court procedure went something like this.
The bailiff will call the next name. Let's impanel the jury and get on with the case. How many more do we need, clerk?
One more, Your Honor.
Call the next one.
Mr. Whitley, step into the jury box, please.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Brown, as counsel for the plaintiff, question this last one briefly, please.
I'll try, Your Honor. Mr. Whitley, is that your name?
That's me.
You are acquainted with the nature of this case by now, I presume.
Yes, sir. Automobile accident.
That's right. My client is suing the trucking company for damages resulting from a truck backing into his automobile. Now, Mr. Whitley, is there any reason you cannot give a fair decision in this trial?
I should say I can make a fair decision. I've been waiting for a chance like this. 2 years ago, one of them trucks backed into me, and I didn't collect a cent. Now I've got a
You're
chance to find...
excused.
What?
I say you're excused. You won't do.
Step down, Mr. Whitley. Clerk, call the next name.
Mrs. Jane Ace, please.
Well, finally, it's about time you got to me. I got up at the crank of dawn, and I've been just sitting around here and...
Stop that muttering. Step into the jury box.
Seat 12, Mrs. Ace.
Ooh, right on the aisle.
Mrs. Ace, is that your name?
I do.
What?
I said I do.
You do what? Put your hand down.
Well, don't you have to hold up your right hand and then say,
I said put your hand down and sit down.
yes, sir.
Mrs. Ace, I'm Mr. Brown, counsel for the plaintiff. Is there any reason you cannot give a fair decision in this trial?
Oh, no, Mr. Brown.
Good. Now,
Now, what's the trial about?
what?
Well, I was sitting so far back there that I couldn't see exactly what was
Oh,
going
this
on.
is an action involving damages in a collision between between a truck backing out of a passageway and crashing into the plaintiff's car.
My goodness, was he hurt?
Was he hurt? Well, he's suing for $10,000 damages.
$10,000. Well, what kind of car was it, Mr. Brown?
Well, it wasn't the car so much. The plaintiff was serious.
We'll discuss the details in the course of the trial. Get to the point.
Mrs. Ace, have you ever been in an automobile accident?
Oh, no, knock wood.
Well, that's good enough for me. If the court please, the jury is satisfactory to me.
Good. It's about time. Is the jury satisfactory to counsel for the defense?
Yes, it is, Your Honor.
You are Miss Baker, aren't you?
Yes, Your Honor. I represent the defendant. The jury is satisfactory to me.
Very well. We will proceed with the case. Counsel for the... Will juror number 12 kindly lower her hand and stop snapping her fingers at the court?
But Judge, I wanted to ask you something. I'm expecting a phone call from my husband. Now, if he calls...
Phone call?
Well, yes, he said he'd call me here to find out how I made out. So if it comes, will you call me? I'll be sitting right here in seat 12.
What is your name?
Mrs. Ace, and my husband is Mr. Ace.
Mrs. Ace, the court will not permit you to receive personal communications interfering with the orderly conduct of this trial. The court will not tolerate any such action.
Well, you're the judge here. Now, couldn't you ask the court to call me?
I am the court.
You're the court.
I am. Sit down.
I thought this room was the court. I mean, in the parodying case, which I saw 3 times.
Did you hear me tell you to sit down?
But if a person can't get a phone call...
Mrs. Ace, do you realize there's a $10,000 law action about to take place here?
Yes, but I told my husband to call me up, and when I...
If it please the court.
What is it, Mrs. Baker?
Your Honor, if this juror is going to sit through this trial, her mind occupied with the ringing of a phone bell...
There will be no phone bells in this courtroom.
But Judge...
Sit down. Will I call her to the phone? This is a court of law. I've been on the bench for 35 years, and I've never heard such a request. It's either insolence or downright ignorance. And before you're finished in this courtroom, Mrs. Ace, you will at least have absorbed some of the decorum congruous to judicial dignity.
How was that again?
Your Honor, as counsel for the plaintiff, I would like to open my case.
Oh, you would.
Your Honor, I ask for a recess. The defendant is trying to locate a surprise witness.
Telephone calls, surprise witnesses. You people see too many movies. The court is in no mood to hear this case now. But before adjourning for the day, I wish to instruct the jury not to discuss this case among themselves or by telephone. I mean among themselves or with anyone else. The jury will phone me tomorrow. That is, the jury will report tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, and I expect every juror to be in the phone booth ready to... I mean in the jury box. Oh, what's the use? Court is adjourned.
Well, that was Jane's first day in court. Oh, well, another day, another $3. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That night after dinner at home, I tried to get Jane to give me all the dope on the case. But the dope on the case had another problem she was wrestling with.
$3 a day. Now, times 280 days to Christmas. Now, that would be...
Jane, you don't think the trial is going to last to Christmas, do you?
It might, the way the judge picks on everything that comes up.
For instance?
Yes. And now 3 times 280 is...
It's going to come to a lot of money, Jane.
Oh, that's nothing compared to what she's going to get. She's suing for $10,000 in an automobile accident.
Who's she?
Miss Baker, I think her name is. She doesn't seem to have been hurt very much. She's very attractive. Tall, dark, no nail polish. But I'm disappointed, dear.
In what?
Well, I thought it would be a more exciting case. Murder, or at least something interesting. Now, who cares about a truck? They said something about a surprise witness tomorrow. I hope it makes it much more interesting.
Well, a truck driver is the defendant, and Miss Baker is the plaintiff?
Yeah, well, one of those. Well, it's kind of mixed up. And that judge, he's all over the place. If it isn't one thing, it's me.
You?
That's right, it's I. Well, find time to pick on my grammar. Now let me see. $3 a day times 280 days to Christmas, and
Jane, I still don't quite get the case. This Miss Baker was driving her car and a truck ran into her. Who's her lawyer?
Mr. Brown, I think.
You think?
Dear, I told you it's kind of mixed up, and I got to figure out how much profits I'm going to make. And besides, the judge told us not to talk about the case to anybody or on the phone.
What's that?
Look, dear, if you want to know more about it, come down to the court and watch me juror.
I might just do that.
They have a studio audience, but don't ask the judge for any phone calls.
Phone calls?
I did, and he blew up higher than a ball.
Jane, you mean you asked the judge?
Dear, please, while I'm on the jury, I can't talk. Now, just be good enough and to say, hello, Jane, and that's all.
Just hello, Jane.
Just those 3 words. Hell-O, Jane.
The next morning, before I left the house, Jane made me promise to come down to watch, and I left her with 3 words. Bonjour, Jane. She picked up a free ride downtown that morning from our next-door neighbor, Ken Roberts. As he was getting into his car, he saw Jane leaving the house for court. I thought it was for court. I didn't know a new complication had set in.
Hey, Jane, what have you been doing?
Just fine, Ken.
Well, how are you?
I've been serving on a jury. I'm going downtown now.
Well, I'm driving downtown, Jane.
Oh, I'll be glad to. Thanks, Ken.
Hop right in. Which courthouse you going to?
Well, I'm not going right to the courthouse. I have an appointment at the hairdresser's this morning, and I asked Sally to take my place on the jury in case I'm a little late. You know, my cousin Sally Anderson.
Oh, yes, Mr. ACES secretary.
I may be 5 or 10 minutes late, and I don't want them to wait for me. So I told Sally to be there at 10 sharp. I just have to get to the beauty shop. My goodness, yesterday I looked like the wrath of grapes next to that Miss Baker.
There's nothing wrong with the way you look today, Jane.
You do? Oh, well, thanks, Ken. But I've had this appointment, and I don't suppose they'd mind if Sally fills in for me for a few minutes. Well, if the judge wants me to, I'll stay overtime to make up for it.
If I were a nice guy, I'd spare you this next courtroom scene entirely. But I'm slightly sadistic. Translation, I'm a heel. But I will warn you, though, to move back a little from your radios, because when Judge Edwards gets a load of Jane's substitute in the jury box, I wouldn't want any of it to get on you.
We will proceed with the case on trial. Counsel for the plaintiff will open the case. Are you ready?
Thank you, Judge Edwards. I am.
Just a minute. Who are you? I thought Mr. Brown was counsel for the plaintiff.
Well, I'm Mr. Jenkins, Mr. Brown's partner. We're both handling this case.
Very well. Proceed.
Thank you, Judge Edwards. And if it please the court, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the plaintiff in this case, Thomas Mason, is suing the defendant for injuries received from a truck loaded with brick and dirt backing out of a building project without an attendant to flag passing motorist. Mr. Mason received such injuries as to necessitate 2 months confinement in the hospital and a month convalescence in his home, to say nothing of the shock and nervous disorder as to incapacitate his regular attendance to the work, by which, until 3 months ago, he earned his livelihood. We will learn in the course of this trial that the injuries received by the plaintiff were so serious as to cause his physician to despair of his complete recovery.
Okay, Sally, I'm here.
Oh, hello, Jane.
Am I very late?
No, that man just started to...
What's going on back there?
Oh, it's all right, Judge. It's only me. I'm back.
Back?
Yes, I let my cousin Sally juror in my place while I went to the beauty shop. Okay, Sally, I'll sit there now. Or you can sit out there and watch if you like.
it's kind of a dull case, Jane.
Mrs. Ace, what is the meaning of this?
Well, like I told you, Mr. Edwards.
Mr. Edwards, I am Judge William Edwards. You will never refer to me as Mr. Edwards.
Well, thank you, William. And you may call me Jane.
Silence! Order! Quiet! Stop that laughing. I will not tolerate these outbursts in my courtroom. I will clear this courtroom if this continues. Now, Mrs. Ace.
Yes?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, my honor.
Order! Order in this court. Did you hear me say I'll clear this courtroom if there's another outburst? We are here on serious business, and it will be the duty of this court to see that you observe proper court etiquette. And putting an attic starter in the jury box is not proper court etiquette.
Your Honor, I move for a mistrial.
Oh, you do, Miss Baker. Well, I say there will be no mistrial.
But, Your Honor, if a juror is not...
Sit down, and you too, Miss Ace. Sit down.
Well, so long, Jane. Your hair looks wonderful. Too good for this trial.
You do? Well, I was in such a hurry, I just...
Silence! Stop that chattering, and let's get on with this case. Mr. Jenkins, counsel for the plaintiff, will proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. As I was saying, ladies and gentlemen of the juror,
Mr. Jenkins, now I thought Mr. Brown was the lawyer.
What was that? What did she say?
I said I thought Mr. Brown was the lawyer. Now, who's Mr. Jenkins? Is he the surprise witness we've been waiting for?
Mrs. Ace, if you had been here when court opened, you would have been apprised of the fact that Mr. Jenkins and Mr. Brown are handling this case.
yes, Mrs. Ace, you see, Mr. Brown and I are partners in law.
Partners-in-law? Oh, that's cute. You're both married sisters.
Order! Order in this courtroom. That does it. I warned you. Clerk,
Yes, Your Honor.
clear this court of all spectators. Everybody out. Get everybody out of this courtroom.
All right, everybody out. Clear the court. Step lively. That's it. Okay, Your Honor. They're all out.
Now we'll see if we can get some decorum here. Mr. Jenkins, proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, as I pointed out, the defendant received such injuries and such shock as to...
Well, go on. What's the matter with you?
But, Your Honor, there are only 11 jurors in that box.
What? 11 Where is she? Clerk,
Yes, Your Honor.
find that woman.
She must have thought you meant her when you said everybody out.
Find her. Find her, bring her back here. And keep hunting till you find her.
This, I am happy to say, I was spared. I had decided to come watch Jane later that afternoon. The next scene of this harrowing story takes place a few minutes later in a courtroom upstairs from Judge Edwards. Another trial by jury is taking place.
Counsel will proceed with the witness.
Thank you, Judge Morley. Now, Miss Delmar, I want to ask you to look at this letter. Do you recognize the handwriting?
I do.
Whose handwriting is it?
Mine.
Louder, please, so the jury can hear you, Miss Delmar.
Yes, the witness will be a little more distinct. Counsel will put the question again.
Whose handwriting is it, Miss Delmar?
I said it was mine. Did you hear that?
Thank you, Miss Delmar. I shall now read it. My darling, perfect man, I'll be there again tonight. Waiting, waiting. Will you ever come to me? Signed, Irene. Then there follows a most peculiar series of X's. I wonder what they could mean. I wish to pass this letter among you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Mr. Foreman, would you read this and pass it along? And as you read it, ladies and gentlemen, kindly keep in mind that this letter was written by a woman who says she loved her husband.
I do love my husband.
Of course you do. I just told the jury you do. Of course, it is a little strange that you should be writing that letter to another man who was murdered, the letter which the jury is now reading. Oh, have you all read this?
I haven't read it.
Oh, I beg your pardon, madam. Will you please pass this back to juror number...
Well, what is it? What's holding things up down there?
Your Honor, there are 13 jurors in the box.
What's that? 13 jurors.
The lady sitting on the rail back there.
What? Madam, how did you get in here? Are you a juror?
Yes, I am.
What seat do you occupy in the box?
No seat. It was as crowded, so I sat on the railing back here.
I move for a mistrial.
Motion denied. And I want this courtroom quiet, or I'll clear everybody out of the room.
Oh, now, don't you start that, too. Judge Edwards just chased me out of his jury.
What's that?
Well, I was jurying downstairs, and Judge Edwards chased us all out, so I came up here. And this is a much more interesting trial.
Madam, get out of that jury box. And get right down to Judge Edwards' court.
I don't like that court down there. It's just an old automobile accident. Would somebody in this jury like to swap cases?
Order! Quiet! And as for you, madam, another word out of you, and you'll be held in contempt of 2 courts at the same time. 2 courts? I've never heard of that. More new things happening these days. Get downstairs to that court. You hear me?
While Jane was wandering around the halls of justice, shopping for a spicy l'amour toujours, her stand-in, Miss Anderson, had come back to my office and explained why she was late. By the time she got to the part where Jane had called the Judge William, I was in a cab on my way to the courthouse with $10,000 bail money, which I happened to have in my pocket at the time.
Well, Judge Edwards, I'm back again, and I can't say I'm too happy to be here. There's a much more interesting case going on upstairs.
Mrs. Ace,
Yes?
how dare you walk out of that jury box?
Well, when you said everybody out, I thought that I was under the impersonation you meant me too. So I went upstairs, and what a letter they read up there. You don't have any letters down here. What you need is a love interest.
Your Honor, may I interrupt?
You may not, Miss Baker.
But I only wanted to say that the defendant's surprise witness has arrived and we're ready to proceed with the case.
Surprise witness? Well, maybe this case will get more interesting.
Mrs. Ace, you try my patience.
All right.
Get back there in that jury box.
Yes, sir.
And I warn you, one more word out of you, and I'll throw the book at you.
You might hit an innocent bysitter, Judge.
Sit down! I warned you now. Just sit down there.
I'm sitting.
Now bring on this so-called surprise witness. More movie stuff. Call the witness.
I call Paul Sherwood to the stand.
Paul Sherwood, take the stand.
Coming.
Paul Sherwood.
Miss Ace, I warned
But
you.
Judge Paul Sherwood, he's my...
Quiet! Miss Baker, you may question your witness.
Mr. Sherwood, where were you on the morning of December 16th?
Well, I was down at the place, the excavation on 45th Street, and when this truck backed out, the man who usually flags it wasn't there. I remember that distinctly.
How do you remember that so distinctly?
Well, this particular morning, I was late getting down there, and somebody else was standing at my peephole because I had breakfast at my sister's, and the toaster wasn't working, and then I had to wait for that.
Oh, I remember that morning.
Miss Ace, that does it.
But Judge, the witness is my brother, and I remember that morning.
I don't care if he's your brother. Brother?
If I had known that was going to be the surprise, well, I would have said
Your
something.
Honor, I move for a mistrial.
Oh, you do. Well, before you do that, I'm going to make an example of that woman.
Your Honor, may I say a word?
Dear, you're here too?
What? Who's this man? How'd he get here?
I'm her husband, Your Honor.
Oh, so you're her husband. You're fined $50.
For what?
For being her husband. And I hereby declare this case a mistrial. It's all because of this woman, Mrs. Ace, who should never be allowed in a jury box again. And if I have any way about this, she will never even be allowed to vote because this will go down in the records of jurisprudence as the most ridiculous mistrial of 1948. Do you understand that, Mrs. Ace?
Yes, sir. I've just been voted mistrial of 1948.
Court's adjourned!
We knew you guys would like that one. Featured in tonight's cast, Mr. Ace was Herb Thompson. And Jane Ace, of course, was Donna Amesmeyer. Judge Edwards was Andre Dixon. And Judge Morley and Mr. Brown was Jay Summerfield. Miss Baker was Nell Brennan. The lawyer in Judge Morley's court was Susan Gadzinski. Ken Roberts, Whitley, and sound effects, of course, was Marty McNulty. Miss Delmar and Sally Anderson was Judy Marsh. Wagnalls, Mr. Jenkins, and your announcer was Roger Morris. And Paul Sherwood and the court clerk was, would you please, Dave Sanchi, that's me. Also, let's hear it for Lorenzo Cordova. And we'd like to thank the Riverside Township Board for their support. This is our last show of the season. And just a reminder that we'll be back on Friday, September 27th, so mark your calendars. And thank you all for coming.